by playing him in exclusively a central area, Jurgen Klopp is taking away what Nunez is good at. Are you ready for the truth about Darwin Nunez? Darwin Nunez's ability on the ball is a big problem. It's a big problem for Liverpool this season. Now, why hasn't Darwin Nunez been a good signing for Liverpool? On the 13th of June, on this channel, we posted a video where we looked at what the potential positives and shortcomings, importantly, of Darwin Nunez to Liverpool, that transfer, what it could be, right? Now, we got a lot right in that video, and this time round, we're going to dive into what the problems with Darwin Nunez's transfer to Liverpool have been for himself as a player, but also, more importantly, the whole team, because it's just not working right now. Before we get into the video, if you are new to the channel and you find value in this bad boy, do me a favor. Move your finger, click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell as well. And if you're feeling very kind, hit that like button as well. Now, this season so far, Nunez has had an average start to life in the Premier League, scoring 3 goals from 8 matches played and assisting just once. The 3 goals he scored have also come from an XG of 3.6, which is an underperformance. We mentioned in the Nunez video that this may be the case this season, as we said that no one can outrun XG. Too good to be true. Let's talk about that. Because 31 goals is pretty outrageous. But it came from an XG of only 19.3. 31 goals. This is according to Y-Scout. He also averaged a conversion rate of 33%, which is exceptional. And this is the thing, you can spin this both ways. There's a broad feeling generally that you can't outrun XG a little bit. It will catch up with you sooner or later. I mean, the best, the Benzemas, the Salahs, the Kanes, the Sons, they consistently outdo their XG. But 31 goals from an XG of 19.3 is it's too hot. His XG was very strong at Benfica. Now, many feared this to be the case for Nunez, given that he was relatively unproven at the elite level and is still just so raw, which opens up questions over the fee that Liverpool have paid for him. 75 million euros, rising to 100 million euros with bonuses. He's been a bit better in the Champions League, scoring 3 goals from 6 appearances, but all of these goals, you got the Rangers game, the Ajax game. I saw him at the Rangers game. He was poor, to be honest. I was at that game at Ibrox, and he wasn't good. He was poor. Like, the ball didn't stick at all. The finish was like, oh, that was good. But apart from that, his performance was pretty dreadful, to be honest. They weren't deciding goals for the fixtures. This is something we're going to get into a little bit later in this video. So, 7 big chances missed is a statistic that we need to look at. This is how many chances with an XG value of over 0.3 that Darwin Nunez has missed in the Premier League. Last season, Darwin only missed 14 big chances in 28 games. This season, he's already missed 7 from 4.8 at 90, so essentially 5 full games, which is worrying. He's happy to work the channels and loves that left side of the channel, which is one of the problems possibly for Darwin Nunez in this Liverpool setup. Let's talk about his positioning, because here you can see Nunez's heat map from last season at the top and his heat map from this season underneath it. There's a big difference between these, and it may be a reason as to why Nunez's form from last season hasn't translated into this season. Last year, Nunez had license to move out wide, to receive the ball and drive when in possession. This meant that he was averaging 1.4 successful dribbles per 90, and it was excellent at exploiting space and being unmarked. For Liverpool, he's being used totally different, and it doesn't suit him. His ability to move the ball in central areas is nowhere near as good as Mane from last season, which I don't think is saying too much or anything controversial, and it limits Liverpool's build-up play. Nunez is only averaging 0.42 successful dribbles per 90, and by playing him in exclusively a central area, Jurgen Klopp is taking away what Nunez is good at. In the video in June, we talked about how Nunez's inclusion in the starting lineup may hinder Liverpool's presence in Zone 14. Because I feel like someone like Elliott could be so much more important to this team this season, because there is that big gap in that Zone 14 area.
that needs to be exploited by Liverpool.
His ability to drop off into space isn't as good as Mane or Firmino. So by starting Nunez, Liverpool have a focal point, yes, but hugely they lack creativity, ingenuity from their centre forward. Now, we called that this would happen in the video in June. We pointed out how the middle of the pitch may become isolated, and this is where Salah comes into it. We said, again, in June that
the problem that this could create is the possibility that it could isolate Salah.
And despite his heat map more or less being the exact same in terms of where he's receiving the ball, another problem is that he doesn't really have the chemistry that he had with Mane or continues to have with Firmino. And also, Mane's starting position was a lot wider as well. So Salah was given a little bit more space to work with. Therefore, when Salah comes inside onto his left foot, he often finds himself running into walls and doesn't have the same options that he had last year in terms of combining. When you've got that width on both sides, it stretches the whole of a back four or a back five. And that's something that Salah's missing this year.
What you do have with someone like a 22-year-old kid is the fact that he will be on the bench and be like, oh, okay, I'm on the bench. Which actually might give Firmino a bit more kind of excitement and value as it's started to wane over the last season or so.
Another point that we got correct is how Nunez was bound to be on the bench and it would give opportunities to Firmino. Nunez only started actually 5 of his 8 Premier League appearances this season, with Firmino making 9 starts. So what is the problem with Nunez at Liverpool? Nunez is being asked to play a completely different role to what he was doing last year, which does account for some of the shortcomings. The problem here is that it does open Liverpool up to criticism. You've bought a player that made a name for himself playing as a left inside forward, and a player who clearly prefers to have his initial starting point out wide before then coming into a central position. So playing incredibly centrally is a strange one. Maybe you want to go that little bit more vertically, fine, but you need the players around him to allow that, and it needs to make it then all about him, which makes it a problem because you can't. It needs to be about Salah. It needs to be about Trent. Look, he's only 22 and can be moulded into whatever position you want, and that is, of course, a positive. But playing him in what is virtually a foreign role for him may be the reason as to why he's underperforming from a statistical perspective. And then, of course, you've got elements where you have that difficult start. You've got the sending off, of course, at Crystal Palace. That all affects the confidence of this man. It sounds like I'm battering him here, and I kind of am a little bit, but I'm just kind of calling it as I see it. And looking at the stats, he just hasn't impressed one bit. Last season, he had a conversion rate of 31%, and we pointed out in that video back in June how astronomical that was. And if he continued it, he'd be an absolute great for Liverpool. But if he didn't, it was going to be difficult. However, the reality is that with most players that they're not going to consistently perform at that level, especially stepping into a more difficult league with a greater spotlight in Liverpool. The other thing to say is that Nunez only did it for 1 season too, so the signing does feel that little bit knee-jerk, and Nunez's conversion rate in the Premier League this season stands at only 9%. And that brings me on to the final point, that Nunez just isn't a match winner. He doesn't have that cutthroat, clinical finishing ability, or certainly not from what we've seen so far. Given from what we've seen so far, I don't think Nunez is that natural match winner. I know he's scored some important goals last year, like the one at Barcelona, but again, his form last season isn't something that is always going to be present. And I think the key word here is form. He was in form, but now he's out of form and looks a shadow of his previous self. And I know he scored the winner against West Ham, but you've got to hear me out on this one. In this game, he had 6 shots in 57 minutes. I don't think he's as clutch as Mane was. And again, he's 22, so time may change that. But, in the here and now, when you're looking right in front of you, it's a problem. And he may be an excellent player to have around when things are going well, and a great option to have in that scenario. But when it's backs to the walls, he's not going to drag you through a match, in my opinion. And I think we've seen that with the one-on-ones that he's missed this season. Nunez has taken a total of 32 shots this season. 11 of those have been on target, and he's only scored 3 goals. If you have a look at other strikers in the league, you've got Callum Wilson, who has 6 from 26 shots. Harry Kane has 10 from 46. Taiwo Awoniyi for Nottingham Forest has 3 from 14 shots. Nunez may be trying that a little bit too hard, and it's maybe inhibiting his composure, because at the moment it really does feel, when he gets into those scenarios, that it is missing from his makeup at this moment in time. So I think there are things that we've learned so far from Nunez. It is early days. And look, we've seen this numerous times with numerous players that they can prove us wrong. But it is a high bar that you're looking to sort of fit into at Liverpool. And so far from Nunez, his start to life at Anfield has been disappointing. There are other problems with the side, but it's always interesting to reflect upon what we initially predicted. And it's interesting to point out when we've got it right, which is what's happened on this occasion so far. Nunez may come good, but the stats we've talked about in this video are some of the reasons as to why he's currently underperforming in a Liverpool shirt, and some may not be his fault, but some definitely are, and either way, he's been disappointing. And I think the final thing to say, and I've said this a few times, is that the Haaland comparisons, they're both a thing of the past, but also an albatross around Nunez's neck, and I think that's something that he's just going to have to get through this season and try and shake off. But his place in this team, tactically, is a problem. But that's just my opinion. I think he might come good, but never to the level of Erling Haaland. But this is football. This is what we like to see. And he's obviously giving absolutely everything right now. Does he have in his makeup to score 30 goals a season, 25 goals a season for Liverpool? And if it's not Darwin Nunez who is the problem, what is the problem at Liverpool right now? Let me know in the comments down below. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.